Hello, welcome to another tonal landscape oil painting demonstration. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy. And the painting I'm bringing today is called Imagination Bay Number 2. I think I had another painting called Imagination Bay, so just to hedge my bets, I'm making this number 2. And it is 4 by 6 inches, and I painted it yesterday. What I'm flashing there is just my linseed oil. A lot of times you can see what it does to the board. It's a very subtle difference, but good. Also good for erasing. And I just get the big bottle of the art. You definitely want to get the type for doing art, not just some generic linseed oil from the hardware store. And then you saw me go over with the paper towel roll. That's just a quick pass because you really don't want it all soppy on there. That's not a good plan. Anyway, it helps you erase. It gives you the color of the board. I'm always mentioning that. And the board is hardboard. It's prepped with 3 or 4 good solid coats of house paint. And I really made an effort on this last bunch of board prep to do a good bunch of sanding in between. I was running into an issue. If you rush it, you get this buildup on the corners, and it's something I'm always mentioning, and just keep your eyes open for it. Now, this scene is I did have a reference, but it was very this is very loosely based on that reference, and that reference is um, just something I sort of concocted in the computer, and it did a good job as acting as a stimulation for this little painting, and I would like to revisit it larger. One of the things I like about it is I love it in a composition if I can have, I like to have a mass on one side, and I love to have something balancing on the other side. But a lot of times for these scenes that might involve water, like this is a coastal scene, it's a bay scene, but I might have to leave it completely open on that side, and that can work as well. Anyway, I love those little trees down in the corner, and also if you've been with me any time at all, you know how I go on about the diagonals, and I was just reviewing an old video the other day, and some commenter was saying, yeah, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean by diagonals? And we may as well talk about it. So, anytime you have, like, you can see the diagonal line of the foreground, what is it? It's a cliff or a bit of land where we're looking down to the bay. That's a pretty steep diagonal, and it doesn't vary very much. So, now some people think that when I'm talking about how you need to watch out for the diagonals, that you shouldn't use them, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they must always be balanced. So in this case, we have a definite balancing factor with that little mass of trees on the bottom, but also the horizon line with the bay itself acts as a counterweight. And I did try a couple different levels with that. I initially was thinking it could go higher, no lower, but these trees on our bottom right, they really need to be below the horizon. That's very critical for making this image work, and I found that out because I tried it. And if you go back a minute or two, you'll see that. So I'm real happy with the way this turned out. I had my normally the reference was not very detailed. It almost looked like something done with the cutout filter in Photoshop. Oh, and I should mention, if you're just dying to know, we have a members area here, and it's $6 a month. And what you get is a huge array of these videos, like this one, but in real time, 4K with no ads. So that's $6 a month, and I split that with Google. And Google needs some money. Come on, help them out. Yeah, but prior to those videos, two things you get. First of all, well, three. You get the 4K, you get the no ads, you get the real time, which is, a lot of times I might not be saying anything at all. But when I do say something, it definitely has more weight and significance because it's coming from in the moment when I'm painting. The other thing is, I flash up on the beginning of every video, you can see the reference image. And some people are just dying to know. Now I got a neighbor doing his lawn. In my experience, it usually doesn't translate into the videos, but if you do hear something like that, well, you know, They're doing their yard work before it starts raining again. Now I'm pretty happy with the way this sky turned out. One of the I won't use the word challenge, but one of the things I try to be aware of is if you look at how I do skies now as compared to maybe 5, 10 years ago, my skies have always been pretty good, and I always enjoyed painting them. But you can see there's quite a lot of like brush fracture going on there, and the challenge is you could completely eliminate that by subtly smoothing out the ends of the brush strokes, and you could make the whole thing look like it was airbrushed, frankly. But more and more, I like to leave that fracture, and it's also a good idea. Actually, I've done the painting not that long ago. I don't know if I put it on the channel yet, but a similar sort of sky with a lot of horizontal cloud elements like that. In that case, things did end again quite a bit smoother. But if I can, I like to keep a lot of that activity in there because it looks more painterly. As a matter of fact, you can very much see the principle I'm talking about by how we're going to go after this water. Now, we got an ad for the book, and the book we just shipped out one yesterday, and that's going to Canada. And thank you for your support, sir. And I'll ship this book to you anywhere on the planet. I'm holding the line. Inflation be damned. $60 US. And now that seems expensive, but if you consider international shipping is included, and that actually cost me more than the printing of the book, it's a pretty good deal. Also, it's only available in print. And I can't say that'll be the case forever. Maybe, I don't know. I have a strong preference for the printed art books. But sometimes if you get one that's real high res, and I have a Galaxy tablet, well, that looked pretty good there. Not too bad. So we'll see. I'm not planning on making this book available digitally anytime soon, but I am conceiving of making some future projects available that way, possibly. We'll see. Anyway, enough about that. We'll talk about the water. It just came and went. So, yeah, I could have gone for more action in the water. The fact is, in the reference, it was one continuous tone, which is fine. I don't mind. Also very interesting in this water area. You can't really tell what's land and where the land stops and starts and the water begins. You see there's like that dark edge that I painted, but I also have another diagonal above that that's more, subtle, more rounded. And I just decided to kind of let it happen as I was doing the painting. Now, in the reference, there was some pretty clear demarcation there, but I'll be honest with you. I have reference, and I share the reference. One of the reasons I'm way more into sharing the reference now than I was in the old days is because, I got reference, but I don't really, I do what I'm going to do in the painting, and if it's different from the reference, so be it. The thing you want to do is use reference as a tool, something to support your creative process, not something that you're a slave to. Or once it starts moving into any kind of negatives, you're best off avoiding, using reference. It's all going to be on the positive tip. In other words, it's good to have something to look at. It's good to have an idea where you're headed composition and color wise. But painting is not photography. Painting is its own deal. And you gotta let the painting do the thing it's gonna do. Now, this bit you see me doing here, I initially didn't really have this peninsula demarcation between it and the one in the back, and that was just an oversight when I was doing the underpainting, because it definitely helps get a distance idea across. So I'm working it in, and you can see I end up probably working harder on that than most other bits of the painting. Also, you'll notice that I felt that was a little too clean, so I bring in another little like sliver as a part of that peninsula. And additionally, in a few minutes here in this video, but it was, maybe a half hour or so later, when the rest of the painting is fleshed in. Very much like what happens with dark clouds when I do those. I noticed that these peninsulas were both too dark and they needed to be lightened, which was a real pain in the butt. But I'm not going to let a painting go um, with something like that. And now a great way to handle that kind of thing is, especially if you're not working alla prima, which I do. Just let it dry and then scumble. Now the scumbling does have one downside. If it's a textured board, then all of the opaque light-colored paint likes to nestle into those little nooks, and that's not very good. But on a smooth board like this, it could certainly work. More and more, I usually won't put a painting back up on the easel unless it's got some very egregious problem that needs to be resolved, and that happens maybe one out of every, I don't know, 50, 100 paintings, if that. I say if that were 50, 100, I think that would be accurate. I don't like to do it, and I'll tell you, it's because I don't know. I'm into a fresh and immediate thing. Every artist is good at doing certain things, and for me, one of my main nemesi, uh, as an artist, I mean, this is prior to before I was even a painter, would be overworking things getting real stiff on me. So I don't like that. I try to keep things as loose as possible, knowing that I have that tendency as part of my psychological makeup. And so for that reason, I don't like to put paintings back up on easel. Because the other thing, and I've mentioned this time and again, is you're not exactly the same person when you load that painting back up on the easel. I do think if it was the next day, okay, you're going to be very similar. But let's say several weeks have passed, or even months. Um, you resemble that person that did the painting in the first place, but it's not the same you. And future you is maybe going to mess up what past you did with the best of intentions. So, and of course, your future self always has a strong prejudice for the future self. That's the portion of you that's moving through the ever-present now. Not to get overly deep and philosophical, we could sum it up by saying um, every painting you do is a unique expression of you and the world at the time that you made it. And you could maybe gain quite a lot by taking paintings through lots of stages. I've worked both ways, but my strong preference now is to respect that as much as possible. To the degree I have some paintings that need work done. There's a really big one in my studio. It just needs waves painted in. I just got a bit fatigued that day. Well, still it sits there. One day I will gird my loins and go in and paint those waves, and then it will be done. But really, I just prefer to make a fresh and beautiful artistic statement. And again, I'm not saying that you can't make a beautiful artistic statement. There you see me lightening up those bits in the past, and that would have been something really. You get a nice effect with the scumbling, and then in a sense, I'm doing a version of scumbling with the wet paint, where I'm working very lightly. And you notice I grabbed this brush. This is a brush with a much looser bristle, so that it would, my logic being that it won't mess with the painting underneath as much. So that's kind of like scumbling. It's a version of it. You can see that looks so much better with those masses pointing backward. And speaking of the diagonal thing, I'm not a huge fan of these triangular peninsulas. In the reference image, if you're in the members area, you'll notice that it's all just triangles coming in from our left, and there's nothing counterbalancing on the right. When I have a painting like that, I always prefer to bring in some it's peninsulas or distant hills or whatever it is I'm painting that has this sort of compositional challenge. I would bring in the masses from coming in from the other side as a counterbalance, not just have a series of triangular shapes moving into the distance with nothing to balance them on the other side of the horizon. Yeah, anyway, that's personal prejudice. I've seen people make those kind of paintings work, so I'm not saying it's not possible. Now you see me, I'm softening some of that choppiness in the sky a little bit. I'm being very judicious, and this brush is pretty good for that job because it has that looser fracture. Anyway, that's it for this week's video. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate you coming around. Leave me a comment if you like. I really like comments, but you don't have to. Until they come back, take good care. Stay out of trouble. God bless you and your family, and fight the power.